it was calling me to come out and do it. But, you know, no matter what happens, I'll always make time. I'll always make it here. So I have summarized quite a bit, a lot of information that I will share with you today. But I want to highlight the accidents because they're going to continue happening. So maybe this will save some people, okay? Maybe a few lives will be saved. So I must come today and do this. Hanifa, you're welcome. Vicky, welcome. Robin, very welcome. Okwir, very welcome. Roger, welcome. Hanifa, Florence, Afoyanen, thank you. I'll make time for the Acholi version at some point. Deborah, very welcome. So I want to talk about the accidents that are happening. Many of you may have seen a video where Museveni says Uganda is a spiritual country. Uganda has a lot to do with the spiritual world and the world that we live in, our world, okay? So I want to highlight some facts that you may be able to relate from Museveni's coming. As I mentioned, Muhoozi's doings today are a replica, if not a mirror image, of what his father did when he was coming in. So somehow try to relate and you'll see where I'm coming from. With regard to the accidents, I told you about maybe a few weeks ago, and one of the videos was around June, where they had amplified the need or desire to cause more accidents, because I'm going to bring it from that time that Museveni came into power. When Museveni came into power around the 1980s and so on and so forth, there were several people that ushered Museveni's government into power. And I say several people because I particularly want to highlight the group called the Kadogos. The Kadogos, which Museveni brags about even when he's asked about on international media or by international journalists about what happened to the children that helped usher Museveni into government. They were called the Kadogos. Now, today, Muhoozi couldn't pull that off, even if he wanted to. There's no way Muhoozi can recruit young children and give them guns and equip them and have them go to whatever bush or come in to join the army or the military. But if he could, he would. But the laws today, with several, international laws that bind the world somehow, he can't do certain things. But when his father was coming into power, so the way I want you to look at this is the Kadogos of Museveni's time versus the children's accidents today. The Kadogos then, who were used by Museveni from 4 years old and onward, and some of you can relate to the LRA war, where Museveni used a lot of young children in the wars, okay? Many, many young children. I have a dear friend from Aboke Girls. She survived the abduction when they raided the school and picked up all those girls and took them away. All of these relationships with children dying, children taken to the bush, children taken. This is all Museveni's spiritual sacrifices. Okay? And I'll bring it up later on and relate it and tie it in together eventually. But so thinking about the LRA war and think about the Kadogos during the NRA, Museveni's militaries that were ushering him into power. Only a few of those Kadogos have lived. Now, in modern time, we'll look at things like accidents, school burnings, fires that have happened consistently over time. Children that have been disappeared, killed. These are things that don't happen in other countries, okay? It's not common. You look at Kenya. We're not too far from Kenya. We're very similar in several ways. Why don't these things happen in countries like Kenya? Why? Kenya has all sorts of media. I'm sure we wouldn't miss this if it happened. But why does this happen in Uganda? And why are you people who are denying or refuting the fact that this is a spiritual thing? Why are you refuting that when you can't compare it to anywhere? What is the goal? So anyways, the Kadogos were Museveni's military that ushered him into power. But you will realize that there is no Kadogo particular names that are spoken about. None of them. None of them lived. None of them have come through from his time in the bush until now, except a few, maybe 3, 4, or 5. Not as many as the hundreds that Museveni had in the bush. Okay? Come LRA war. Several young children, many of us, I am actually from northern Uganda, trust me. The children who were taken, several, I mean, you couldn't count how many children never returned. Many never returned. The ones who returned were skillful. The ones who returned were able to survive. But all those were sacrifices. So let me bring you into Museveni's spiritual world. Museveni has ruled Uganda spiritually and physically. But he relies heavily on the spiritual world of how things and consults and witch doctors guide him on what to do, when, and where. So for a long time, he has had several different witch doctors who he has consulted with. And these facts that I'm bringing to you are from people in Museveni's family. His family, his close relations, you know, the people that reside around them that are fed up with how this man and these people, what they're doing to Ugandans as a people. So Museveni has a complete spiritual world since the beginning. When he came in, he was told by his witch spiritual world to figure out how to get ushered into governance of Uganda. And they asked for several young blood or young children. That is why the Kadogos who he captured and added into his military, the ones from Luero, children were, when he was coming in, you know, thousands of people died, but a lot of children were taken to join his army forcefully. Those children never came back because those were required, the blood was required to usher Museveni in, okay? To install Museveni at the time. So this time around, come Muhoozi, the same thing is happening. When Museveni has met several different witch doctors from different countries, even Burundi. Sometimes we've known when they're in State House trying to do things for him, to keep him active, to keep him doing this. He has been requested for a lot of things. One of the things that they've requested Museveni at that time, before he started these atrocities, was that since Museveni has been in government for a while, and now he wants to give this to his son. By the way, all of the witch doctors rejected Muhoozi. When Museveni, now that Museveni has come to this, it is because they have said it is impossible for that Muhoozi to be a president of this country. Muhoozi does not have what his father had that brought him in. So Museveni has kept going back and saying, you have to find a way to do this. You have to figure out how to do this. You must figure out how Muhoozi can be ushered into power. And so the requests have become more astronomical because they keep expounding because of the difficulty of the challenge to get Muhoozi into power. You know, many of them have said that there's a guy called Ndayabaje, something like that, from Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania especially. I think Ndayabaje was from Tanzania. Different countries, Mama Finas, they're all consults of Museveni in the spiritual world. So over and over and over, they've said Muhoozi cannot rule Uganda. Ugandans have rejected Muhoozi. Museveni goes back and says, what can I do? So they asked Museveni to offer one of blood from his own family, sacrifice one of his children or whatever. And Museveni says, I can't do that. But what else can I do? What else do you want? So they go back and forth and this and the other. And they decide, you know what? Give us about 700 young people as sacrifices. 700. And as crazy as that sounds, I mean, this is a huge challenge to try to usher in Muhoozi because Museveni couldn't do it. And Ugandans have rejected Muhoozi and they know that. So the reason why these accidents are happening, there's been several school burnings, you know, children burned here, children stolen, children lost. I mean, National Unity Platform, this, that, and the other. They've not stopped at National Unity Platform alone because they have to rack up the numbers, okay? They've gone on to school children and in several different ways. There's 3 different tiers that they felt like they can do this. I talked about a train accident once, maybe around June or May, where Museveni was asked to perform a train accident because the train, being a train, it is borderless. It travels between countries, you know, because wherever the rail goes, the train goes. Another thing they said, a train is unstoppable. No matter what, as long as Muhoozi is accepted or or set in place in his seat as the president of Uganda, he will be unstoppable. And the other thing is, the train being unstoppable, it would give them their dream of the Bachwezi ruling Uganda limitlessly until, I don't know, a monarchy or whatever they try to turn Uganda into. And so that explains to me, when I think about the train accident the other day, it is something that was in plan. They meant to do it. So they've asked Museveni to produce 700 sacrifices, human sacrifices of children. They've done this several different ways already. The 4 accidents that have happened, the one that happened in Jinja, let me see, in Mukono, Jinja, it is said that Museveni himself went to the scene that same night with Muhoozi, and they performed some witchcraft activity with the blood of those children. It is said that at every point of every accident where it happens, Balaam follows. Balaam is in sight, is within range before that happens. Now, okay, so there will be 3 forms. Now, they've requested that of the 3, there will be the deaths that we've seen of the children with the buses and trying to get to the events, such as tours. One of the tour incidences that happened yesterday, the bus accident where most of the children died, the a bit older children, one of the girls who survived spoke about this and said, you know what? The driver of the bus showed intentions of trying to cause an accident. And the only reason this girl survived is because she heard him speak and she realized that she was in danger. And she stayed alert and watched the moves of the driver. The fact that the driver turned off the vehicle, exited the bus before the bus crushed, helps explain the facts that that girl is speaking about. And it won't surprise me if that girl disappears from our sight. Something could happen to her because she has spoken. But because she was old enough to understand what was happening and pay attention, she was able to survive. Now imagine the little children from King David School? The little children who could not say anything, the ones in Kapchora, I believe, that could not explain, or most of them died. Had they, or were they able to speak, something would have been done about, or we would know that something wasn't right about what they were doing. Many times somebody has said, you know, we told the driver to stop, or there was several mechanical accidents. And this is the argument where several arguments have been about the mechanics of the vehicle not working and this, that, and the other. But let me tell you this. Do you know that if Ugandan kids are going on a tour and the family has contributed and all that, the ministry is the one that gives them the vehicle and the driver to take those children to whatever destination it is? Is it as difficult? Is it challenging for intentions like these to be passed down to a driver who will be promised a lot of money to go ahead and do something like this? I don't think so. So even if you argue about whether or not the mechanical issues were an issue, it is possible that the mechanics was an issue. But for that driver to push on against his own, against instructions of failure to perform as a vehicle, and if he cared about his life or wanted to save the children's life, he could have just stopped, because he'd be paid anyway. He's paid by the ministry to do the driver job. And so if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If he can't make it because the vehicle is dead, it should have been possible. But it never stopped. He pursued this thing to the end until those children were gone. So another vehicle was the accident that happened in Omoro. That was one of the first ones. Now, I don't have exact details about the Omoro accident, but I'd like to add it to this, because in places where people have been alert or heightened in their information about how things happen in our regions or in Uganda, people pay attention. They record, they take videos, they discuss things, they see inequities and wonder and figure out and try to share information so we can figure things out together. But I did not get as much information from the Omoro accident, but I know about it and it's documented. I do believe it is part of this thing. When they want 700 young children's blood, they're going to find it somehow. The other mission that they're trying to do, the third way, which one way was through the bus accidents, the second way is to get those sacrifices without losing any blood. Now, this one is going to be a very, all of them are scary. But what we suspect and what they've said is that they'll possibly have accidents at, for example, Karuma Falls, where a vehicle or a bus full of children will just, end up in Karuma and nobody will be revived or nobody will be found or nobody will survive. That's another plan that they have. The other one is on the streets as children are being discharged from school, going home. A lot of you come out at once. I remember when I used to go to day school, lunchtime or after school, several hundreds of children pour into the streets and everybody disperses home. The plan with that is that they Muhozi or Muhozi's either convoy or they'll have other people do it, is to have a vehicle malfunction into a crowd of children, several crowds, and just go ding, 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 just to get as many as they want. Okay, so that is likely to happen. Watch out for the falls, Karuma Falls, Seziwa Falls, those falls and accidents happening where children's buses will just disappear and will have no record of where it went or what happened. And the other one is the street accident where the children will be released from school and this will happen to several of them on the street. Okay. The other relationship, this thing of the sacrifices began with, do you remember the school where this Onyum guy went and killed some children? I think there was 4 students in a baby school or a nursery school. That is the point when, around that time is when they started the sacrifices and they're counting towards whatever number they want to reach. When those kids died, there are people who commented and said, you know what, we did not see any sign of blood. And the Onyum case, as they said, firing squad or whatever, none of that has happened. That goes to show you that whatever is happening in Uganda is not a coincidence, it's not an accident. These are well-planned atrocities by the Museveni's government to try to get Muhozi and to instill Muhozi in power by all means. Okay? So I spoke about the Kadogos and the forms of accidents. I talked about the train. I talked about the street when the children get out of school. And then the death without blood, which will be either through fire or places like the Karuma where the falls of water runs fast, or if a vehicle drops far down, there's no way of rescuing it or getting help quickly to get them saved or whatever. Okay. So Balaam has been all over these decline. So Balaam has been all over these instances. His act with Namere, going to hospitals and, I don't know, recording themselves, doing whatever, all that is to keep you away from paying attention to what is actually happening. But the intentions of these accidents come straight from State House. Nobody should fool you. It is their spiritual fulfillment. They look forward to it. They want it. They're desperate to get Muhozi as president of Uganda. And that's why they're doing things like that. Okay. Another thing that I want to bring to your attention is around the time that the Namugongo event happens. Okay. That was one of the attempts to try to get as much blood of the young children as I told you about. Now, the way this Namugongo thing played out, when they consulted with their spiritual person, they had talked about starting with the Namugongo event. I mean, once the crowds came in from all over Uganda, all over the world basically, to attend the pilgrimage to Namugongo, they would then release same thing as the children coming out of school and the accident happening. They would have some malfunctioning vehicles just to hit a bunch of people. A bunch of people. As you know, Namugongo is fully crowded and filled on the day of that event. Robin, yes, you're right. You're right. And I'm going to speak about Balaam and how Balaam is all over this thing, including the exhumation of Paulo Cafero, which Paulo Cafero himself is no longer in the ground where he's supposed to be. Because the story of Paulo Cafero, I can tell you about that after this. I don't want to lose track. But anyways, the Namugongo incident, the way that happened, they had requested that that incident be the first because it was timely, the first incident in line, because the date was coming close. And the spiritual person told them and said, you know what, if you start with the Namugongo incident, you're going to ruin everything else, because it will look like, you know, people will be more prepared for other atrocities, and you will not be successful in getting as much as you could if you start the other way around. So they ended up starting with the vehicle accidents and the trucks and the train, and eventually they may or may not get to the Namugongo type incident, but it's supposed to be one of the ways of doing it. At big and large gatherings, they will do something like that. So the Namugongo incident was saved, well, not saved by the fact that the spiritual person said it is not ideal to be first. And so when they were about to do it, Museveni came out and announced the Ebola outbreak in Uganda and a cancellation of the event, and paid the religious people involved a lot of money for them to shut up and not try to push for the event to happen. Because as you know, several other events of large gatherings have happened around that time, such as the soccer game, the Arsenal game, where a lot of people gathered, and there was no such thing as a spread of Ebola. He used that because he knew that it might be, because they can't do it, he had to figure out how to terminate it. So people got, the religious people that are present or a part of this event were paid heavily to stand down from completing that, the Namugongo event. Okay. So Namugongo was supposed to be the beginning of the 3 kinds of accidents or atrocities that would help give them the numbers of to get to the 700 that they wanted, or the spiritual person is requesting. As you remember, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I talked about Little Muheju. Little Muheju was an incident that we knew about and we talked about. And it was arranged in State House that the bus of Little Muheju, or the school Little Muheju, there would be a fire at the school in where the children are, or the bus that carries children from Little Muheju to take them to an event would be, the driver was to cause an accident, so all those children would die. You remember that the day before that event, and because we spoke about it, this is one of the security alerts that they sent to me and said, make sure you get this out right now. Get it out. It's urgent. This has already been activated. The ball is rolling. Get this out right now. I came on, and I wasn't planning to, but I had to because of that was going to happen. So when we talked about Little Muheju, the day before the event, we were able to successfully reach the school, the owner of the school, director of the school, and talk to him about it. But the driver who was supposed to drive those children in the morning was discovered hanging from a tree, dead. Now, his wife, the wife of this driver, says, my husband has had no mental issues. My husband had no problems. My husband woke up like normal and had his breakfast and was ready to go to work. But because he wakes up early and has to get certain things done before he has to head to his work, something happened. Just like one of the National Unity Platform, if anybody remembers the name, there was a National Unity Platform chairman, I think in Mukono, who was also found hanging from a tree. And this was a thing that the Musevenis had done. What they do is they killed a person before they hung him up on the tree. Now think about a man who has a regular job. He's a driver. He loves his job. His family is stable, has no problems, has no debt. I think his father was coerced to say that he had some debt, therefore committed suicide. He was not the kind that would likely. Fefeka, yes, Princess Dash, thank you. You remember Fefeka, who something like this happened. He was killed first, then eventually hung from a tree. Now, you may say, well, autopsy reports say differently. In Uganda, these guys can make up just about anything. Any and everything can be forged and made up by the Musevenis, and you can doubt all you want, but you can't do anything about it. So they made up, autopsy reports saying he hanged himself or whatever the case might be, but he did not. He did not. So the Little Muheju instance that we talked about the day before it happened, the next morning the bus driver of Little Muheju was found hanging. He must have been strangled first or killed some way and then tied on a rope and hung on a tree. The next morning, it was the scariest thing in town. His family found him hanging from a tree, dead, on the day of the bus trip that would cause that accident. What they hated about this is the fact that the information leaked, and they figured out that it must have been the bus driver who leaked that information to us. It was not. But as I sometimes said, when these people have these missions, they have the team that they'll meet with to perform this, and then they'll have another team that they'll meet with to clear the performers of the mission that they've sent somebody off to, because they want to make sure there's no evidence that can be tracked. And that's why I fear for the girl that spoke from the accident yesterday, the school accident, because I think her life could be in danger, because she spoke vividly about how she remembers the driver saying, you guys are dead. Like, I must do this. I'm going to make sure none of you is going to make it to the event. He showed all signs. And I don't know if, I feel like it was God trying to let some of them know that something is going to be amiss, because at some point, even if somebody's an expert at doing certain things and hiding the truth and all of that, they say the truth always comes to light. So what I believe is that somehow this girl was blessed to know and see the intentions of this driver and be able to figure out and share eventually that this had happened. Some parents had to go take their children out of the mortuary where they had put them, and yet they were not dead. They were not. So they wanted to make sure they rack up the numbers, despite the fact that some may survive. We know that the medical system is really poor, that saving is almost oblique. You're hopeless to try to figure out saving somebody's life if they're in a medical emergency. There's no way you can succeed. Very rarely, if the family is killed or people are killed around them, they can try to figure things out. But in an accident like this, many of them will eventually die, even if they had rescuable, trauma that could be resuscitated or could be whatever. And some of them could have been in shock, because of the bang, the hit. And eventually they'd come out of it. When people have concussions, they come out of things like that. So it could have taken a while for them to actually wake up from it. But all of these accidents are well intended by State House. Museveni and Muhoozi, you guys can share this, are the perpetrators of all the school accidents, of all the children's sacrifices. Onyum, the case of that school where he went and murdered the 4 kids, they made all this story up. Onyum, his case was something that was planned from State House. All these bus accidents were planned from State House. Little Muheju's driver was supposed to be awarded a lot of money if he performed that accident. But little did he know that after him, there was another meeting to clear him so he would never see that money again. It is something that when you couldn't tell anyone. I don't think he could tell his wife. you know? So it is the syndicate of events that make certain things go through or some not make it. The nature of the filth of it, the technicalities that come with it, but more so the plan from these people in State House. I'm telling you, Museveni's existence in Uganda has costed more than recorded number of lost lives in Uganda. More than recorded. I'm very sure of this. Imagine if Muhoozi now, or Muhoozi's existence, is causing this much documented sorrow or atrocity in Uganda. The same people, same brains, same mindset, same playbook continue into today. Similar type of atrocity, similar kinds of accidents. Why do we not believe that it's government policy that all these things continue to happen? Especially those of you who like to swat these things down and say, oh yeah, never mind. That couldn't be. Why? When are you going to put 2 and 2 together? When will this make sense? Which country do you see things like this happening? Show me which country. Where? Let us open our minds and observe things as they happen and relate and unrelate and compare with other places. I'm not saying Uganda is not civilized. Uganda is as developed as certain countries, obviously not like United States, but there are some things that are basic that must just occur just about anywhere. You can't tell me about a driver wanting to just do this and telling a child that, you know what, I must do this. Telling a child as if he doesn't have kids, as if he has never had kids, you know. We must think beyond what they feed us through New Vision. New Vision is the worst. Natasha Broadcasting Services, NBS, is the worst. The abduction of Mwanga Chivumbi, the one that happened along his way, the last abduction that happened recently. NBS was on the scene of the abduction, which seemed like a regular traffic stop. Regular traffic stop with the media services present to document an abduction by men and women in non-uniform without a number plate on the drone that has picked him up in a country where you have a president or you have leadership that claims to be appropriate, that claims to be doing what they do for the people. When do they do anything for the people in Uganda? When? Tell me when. In the last week alone, I mean, numbers of events, sorrow upon sorrow upon sorrow upon sorrow. Why? Why don't we, and the people who keep saying, Museveni tuyambe, oh, why? Abayambe from what? Do what? All of you calling upon Museveni must stop and figure out that you are alone. If you have a president or a savior, it is His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. You have nobody else. It is government policy. It is Museveni and Muhoozi's policy to destroy you Ugandans. By all means. And they're getting to it. Every day, something happens that we're like, oh my goodness, I did not think that's possible. I'm going to tell you some more things that you're going to be like, I think she wants some content today. But no, the reason why I have to get this off my chest is because I know it, and I know it's privy information that is important, that is true, that is coming from the source, from these Museveni people, that I must share, get off my chest so that when it happens, I'm not guilty, that I feel okay because some people might be saved by this. I know there's people who follow and obviously listen and take heed, and I appreciate that. If I can save one person, you know, I feel like my job is done, or the reason or my existence, my purpose for doing this is met. So please do not rely on Museveni to do anything for you. No, Museveni Tuyambe is not real because he doesn't do it. He doesn't. He's not here for Ugandans whatsoever. Museveni is here for him and himself. As I mentioned to you, the spiritual person told him that Muhoozi has been rejected by Ugandans. all over. Museveni said, what else can I do? Oh, and the person said, well, okay, if you must, give me a sacrifice from your family. One of your children, kill one of them and give him to me. She said, and he said, oh no, I couldn't do that. Well, what else can I do for you? What else can I do to make sure Muhoozi becomes president of Uganda? And that is where he gets to the 700 young people or spirits of young people who have died. And it must be orchestrated by them. In the next few days, Museveni himself is going to go to Kapchorwa. Museveni or Muhoozi will go to Kapchorwa, to the site of the accident, to go and perform spiritual activity. And it's not because he's going to go there and just go straight to that. He's going to come formally, as if he's coming to the event of, I don't know, commemorating the children that have died. But his main goal will be to go there and perform the final rituals on those children's blood at the site of the accident. You notice he has picked the youngest group. The youngest group. I'm telling you, Museveni defends the Kadogos he had coming into power. He said African children, once they are 4 years old, they're good enough to fight. Give them the gun and they'll do it. That's exactly how he believes. Because he resides in a spiritual world. Museveni is not here with us. No. No. He derives and thinks about his power from that far. While we are here saying, oh, we are Sevdis, we don't believe in this, Tulibalokole, we believe in God. Can you believe King David's school is a school of a lot of saved people? Balokole? Do you know that the people, Museveni's family are Balokole? Do you know that Natasha is a pastor? Do you know that Janet Museveni and Museveni, well, the late Janet Museveni and her husband pretend to be pastors or religious? But do you see how Museveni has captured all religious leaders, all of them, that go to State House and pick up brown envelopes every year, besides, without first of all looking at the medical budget? The budget for religious people passes and is over 5 billion Uganda shillings. That goes to religious people to keep them calm, because Museveni knows the power of the spiritual world. He knows whether you are Muslim, whether you are saved, whether you are Catholic, whether you are whatever you are. If somebody concentrates enough mentally to achieve something, they can achieve it. So Museveni snatches that power before it takes root. That's why pastors come out and curse Bobi Wine. There's this lousy woman who came out the other day, some sort of pastor like that, and said Bobi Wine has escaped, left the country, he has left his mansion here, and blah, 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 blah. Those are people who are paid by Museveni to come and tarnish Bobi Wine's name, to put it into the congregation, the Ndiga, to tell them to unwind what they had, to erase what they know, their belief, so that they put in garbage and start looking at His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu in a different way, in a disrespectful way, in a less mindful way, as if he's a useless person. But let me tell you this. The only person, and I respect Bobi Wine so much, His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, you can never find a stain on his name. No. No. It's like as if he did not grow up in Uganda and in the slums of Uganda. You couldn't believe the clean record of Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. You couldn't. Even the pastor who is speaking, I understand, has had some prostitutional history. Where does a prostitute or a former prostitute find the guts to come and prosecute a man who has done just about everything right? We all make mistakes. I'm sure he's got some. But he doesn't have heavy hitters like the normal stuff. You've never heard that he has been cheating with us, I don't know, so-and-so. Bobi Wine has no child out of wedlock. Bobi Wine achieved his wealth from the age 25. He was one of the first drivers of an Escalade, and I'm not saying an Escalade measures up to wealth. Bobi Wine rose from a family where he was the very first or the only ones that came out and tested success that he had never seen. He couldn't say that my brother is wealthy, or my brother is this, or my dad is so wealthy, and you know, I'm going to be like my dad. No. This is somebody who forged his life on his own, but hit every target the right way. If anybody is an inspiration to the youth of Uganda, it's Bobi Wine. It's Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. I learn from him. We all should learn from him. Not Pastor Bujingo, who shot and killed his bodyguard, and they did nothing to him. Pastor Bujingo, who still stands up and preaches, shot and killed his bodyguard. This is the person who can insult Bobi Wine. Can you imagine? All these other artists have something that they've done. Chameleon killed somebody right in his yard. One of his bodyguards or security guards. I mean, you name it, he has been. He's highly respectable. He speaks well. He's a decent human being. His children are raised well. He has been married to one woman all of his life. All of his married life. He has done well for himself. Pastor Kayanja has tons, square miles of land in Karamoja. But do you know what is happening in Karamoja? Do you know what is happening in Karamoja? Children, mothers, men, all equal, are dying of hunger every day. Everybody. In Karamoja. Everybody's dying. Let me see if I can get some pictures. Pastor Kayanja is in Karamoja owning square miles of land. That is your pastor. Pastor Kayanja. Square miles of land. Some of you are not going to like me for this, but I really don't care. Some of you spiritually are consumed that you can't use your own reasoning, even for common sense to rescue you from this nonsense. All these pastors have flaunted money by Museveni to come out and instill filth in your mind. Even if you knew the image of Kyagulanyi as being a terrific human being, when the pastor speaks in church, you come out a changed person, an evil person. You look at him differently. You demean him. But yet the person who they are preaching, they preach Museveni all the time. They preach peace. Which peace do you have with buses flipping over like this, with children in them? Some of you who have lost children are NRM diehards. In fact, one of the guys who lost a nephew was seen not too long ago talking against His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. A few days ago, a nephew of his said goodbye to him and went to his death on a bus accident engineered by Museveni in State House. Do you see how it doesn't matter? Right must remain right across the board. Whether you are Mulokole, whether you are saved, you are Protestant, you are Catholic, you are Muslim, you are Buddhist, whatever you are, Seventh-day Adventist, let us focus on the truth first, is that our children should not die like this. Let us say that is for sure the bone of what we need to build on. That is the bone. That if something goes wrong, it affects all of us. Look at the rescued South African Ugandans. The Ugandans who were brought from South Africa were brought straight into Chankwanzi. Well, they landed at Entebbe Airport and they were all forced into military trucks. Whether they consent or not, in fact, they didn't even ask their opinion. While they had their families waiting for them at the exit, at the gate to go home, they were diverted forcefully into Chankwanzi. And they have people like Nabanja, the dumbest human being in Ugandan government, going to teach them patriotism. I don't think she can even spell it. They are there being indoctrinated. They are going to be forced into the Ugandan military, the UPDF, which UPDF does not serve Ugandans. These people are going to be used like those those target things they use when people are going to shoot targets. They'll be in the front lines. If there's a real war or whatever, if they need them to go to Gaza, those are the people who are going to be boarded first, just so they're cleared. I mean, what more do you need? Can we just agree on what is true? Can we agree on what, like, the facts, the bounds of life? Like, if you have a child, all these kids should matter to you, and well-being of all children should matter to you before religion. You know what I believe? My religion is doing what's right to another person. Treat somebody else the way I want to be treated. That is my religion. Then I can embellish with whichever house I go to pray, whichever one that is. But my religion is to do good. I don't want to miss good karma. I don't want to miss good karma. Because I know when you sow, you reap that. You can't sow potatoes and reap tomatoes. You can't. So let us first of all agree on the basic standards of and the bonds of life is that every child should matter to you. The children of the Onyum case should have been it because we hadn't caught on. We hadn't caught on that. That should have been it. Until we turn our focus and learn who the enemy is. I like to talk about Moses a lot because Moses was born at the times when the Pharaoh was killing all baby boys. All baby boys had been ordered to be killed at the time that Moses was born. When Moses was born, his mother said, you know what? I'm going to figure out. Now, during the times, let's talk about this. During the times when the Pharaoh ordered that boy children be killed, okay, which I'll also talk about later because I have something that relates to that. The intention was that people who are birthing those children should strangle boys right away so they don't make it out of the birth canal. Like at birth, they'd bring the baby from wherever they bring it to you, dead. That was the idea. Then people said, you know what? And this is what Ugandans we should adopt. That we will know the source of our problems and figure out how to deal with it in a smarter way. Because if we keep listening to these pastors and sheikhs and all these people preaching Museveni, we are going to lose focus on what is important. So listen to this. So the Pharaoh ordered that at birth, all boy children be killed, which meant at the time of birth, they do something to the boy, hand them to the mother dead. Okay? So the mothers who were pregnant in the future, after that, figured out, you know what? We should not go to those birthing places anymore. Let us not call Mama Susan from over there to come and help us birth, because Mama Susan has killed most of the children that she has delivered. The mothers decided to deliver privately at home with their loved ones alone. That is a thought or a trend of thought that Ugandans should have. If going to schools is causing this, we have to figure out a different way. If going to trips is causing this, we have to figure out a different way. Don't go to trips. Your children should not go to trips. No. Okay? So, in the Bible, when those children, the mothers decided to have these children at home. And when they did, they were able to rescue more boys to live, including Moses. He was born at home. His mother decided to put him in a basket and float him on the river to anywhere where somebody of good faith would raise him. He ended up in the Pharaoh's daughter's hands, who could not or didn't have children. Raised in the kingdom of the same Pharaoh who has ordered the killings. That boy was raised there. He survived. Kyagulanyi was raised right under Museveni's nose. And he has survived several instances to kill him, which I'll get to later on. But when Kyagulanyi found out the problem of Uganda being Museveni and his people, after learning of this history, Kyagulanyi decided to rescue his people. In a message, people power. We've all learned. I came out of people power. When I learned about that, I figured, you know what? Change of strategy. These are the problems we have now. Let's gear all our ammunition toward them. So Moses learned eventually when he grew up that he was actually a child of the slaves. Like Kyagulanyi realized that he was actually a child of the suffering Ugandans. That these people who call themselves Mama Uganda and Tata Uganda are actually not. They're the cause of our people dying. So Kyagulanyi decided, you know what? Change of strategy. From now on, I'm going to fight for the people on the ground, the actual Ugandans, because that's who we are. So us as Ugandan people, let us agree that our enemy is Museveni and his family. These Rwandese people are the enemy. When you have your kids, preach. I tell my children all the time, let your children know. Let whoever needs to know. I know we have challenges with our parents because they ushered him in, and some of them are doing too good to look at that side of the coin. I'm begging you to not be swooped by what they're telling you, especially if they're leaning towards Museveni and his family and Muhoozi. Break away from them as much as possible, because it is about you, who does not have a future now. If Moses had come out, if Moses had stayed the king, the son of the king, the son of the princess, the Israelites would have never been rescued. If Kyagulanyi Ssentamu had said, you know what, I'm actually doing pretty good. I'm wealthy. I'm married. My kids are doing well. My family is strong. You know, I've got everything I need. Why bother? If Kyagulanyi had done that, we would be nowhere. These accidents would happen like every day, every night. They would have no time to plan these things. Maybe Muhoozi would have another Kadogo, whatever, group and start from there. But since His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu came and gave us people power, guys, let us take this and run with it. Let us figure out the bounds of right and wrong and focus and let somebody's pain be yours. You know, Moses left the kingdom, went away and strategized and came back. Bobby Wine, His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, when his life was at risk, like, you know, at the time that he was, for 2 months after the election period, when they searched everywhere high and low for him, he left the country to save his life, because then he can save Uganda even better. So the people who come and say nonsense, like that prostitute pastor who came and said, oh, he left, he ran away, blah, blah, blah. The things that His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu is moving from out here, you cannot do it in Uganda. It was meant to be that way. That is why I say Uganda is right where it should be. But join in the stampede so we can figure this out and get ahead maybe sooner. The Israelites, after leaving Egypt, spent 40 years in the desert because they couldn't agree on moving forward. I'm not a pastor or a preacher, but I read and I dissect and I think about things, and perfectly Moses relates to His Excellency and all of, you know, what so far what has happened. He's gone and is shaking the world. He is shaking up Uganda, I'm telling you. Museveni struggles with accountability more than anything in this world. This is the guy who already stole the election. He has won, but is in a hot seat. He cannot exist peacefully. The way he had planned it, by now he'd be gone to Tanzania, maybe dead or whatever. Museveni can't afford to die. No, he can't. Because everything they planned has been wiped off the table. Everything.